Alright guys, welcome to the first episode on this YouTube channel, the Just to Start YouTube channel. This channel is going to be covering all things NFL, any news, rumors, record predictions, all things 2025-2026 season, and so on hopefully will be covered. So in the first episode, we're going over the record predictions for this season. The season starts Thursday, the Cowboys and Eagles, so I figured I'd get this video out as soon as possible. Let's get right into it. So the first division we're going to be going over is going to be the AFC West. And that is where I have the Chiefs going 13-4 this season. I think the Chiefs are going to have a bounce back year. I think Mahomes and Kelce are going to come for vengeance after losing the Super Bowl in that fashion against the Eagles. The Eagles pretty much dominated them the whole game. The big news coming out recently in the past month is Rashee Rice is going to be suspended for the first 6 games. I think they're going to start off slow, but I think they're going to pick it up where it matters, usually down the stretch. That's when they start showing that they're the real deal. And that's why I'm going 13-4. All right, the next team we have the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos defense, I think, is going to be one of the best defenses in the league. They were already one of the best defenses in the league last year. They were 7th last year in total yards given up as a defense and had the reigning defensive player of the year in Pat Surtain on their defense. And then also they had 2 key additions in the offseason. You got Dre Greenlaw and Talanoa Hufanga. So I think, another year of the defense getting better. 2 key additions, all the things you hear out of the Broncos camp and all the practices and everything is how dominant their defense has been. All right, moving on to the Los Angeles Chargers. I have them going 9-8 and just missing the playoffs. It's still a good season, a little bit of regression. And I think they're going to have a solid year, but losing Rashawn Slater is going to be a big problem for them. Joe Alt is going to be moving over to left tackle this year. And they're going to have, I think, Trey Pipkins play the right tackle this year. Joe Alt played left tackle in college, shown that he's a good tackle, left or right. However, I think the run game's going to be affected a little bit. I think they're still going to have a good run game. I think Amarian Hampton isn't going to have as big of a year as if Rashawn Slater was starting on the left and Joe Alt was starting on the right. However, I still think they'll get 9 wins. Losing Rashawn Slater is not only going to affect the run game, but also the pass game. And then finally in the AFC West, we have the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders made a lot of big moves in the offseason, got Geno Smith, drafted Ashton Genty, and I think the offense is going to keep them in games, but I think the defense worries me. It's a one-man wrecking crew with Max Crosby. He's the dominant player, one of the best defensive players in the league, but you just lost Christian Wilkins. He only played a couple games last season, but he was on pace to playing this season, and I don't see too many other stars in that defense other than Max Crosby, so I think the offense will win them 7 games, but the defense, on the other hand, I don't know about that. All right, we're going to be moving over to the AFC East, and that's where I have the 2-seeded Bills going 13-4. And, this could be the Bills' year finally. Josh Allen is going to continue his dominance as one of the best players in the league. I think their offense is well-rounded. Their defense is well-rounded. Keon Coleman could potentially break out this year. Khalil Shakir, solid. Good tight end room, good O-line. Defense is very well-rounded. It's all going to be on Josh Allen, and I'm not going to doubt him. So I have them going 13-4 as a 2 seed in the AFC right behind the Chiefs. Moving on to the Patriots, I think it's a big improvement this year, especially after hiring Mike Vrabel in the offseason. Just after, if I'm not mistaken, Gerard Mayo was head coach for 1 year and done. And I think firing Gerard Mayo, it sucks. It was premature, but I think it was the right decision. And I think Drake May is going to have a big year. He's definitely going to be improving from last year. And, I think it's going to be their first positive record since 2021 under Mike Vrabel. And I think they're going to just miss the playoffs, but I think Mike Vrabel is the stability they need in this organization after losing Belichick. And I think this is something to build on for next year for them to potentially make the playoffs. 9-8 is not a bad season for the Patriots at all. It's their first positive record season since 2021. They're 5-1 in the division. I have them going. I get the Jets and the Dolphins aren't much competition for them, but 5-1 in the division, 9-8 record, just missing the playoffs. I think they'll have big things in the 2026 season. Now the Jets, on the other hand, man, I don't know how to project Justin Fields to go this year. Even the Dolphins, the Jets and Dolphins just don't move me this year. I think the Jets defense will keep them in games. Sauce Gardner, Quinnen Williams. Aaron Glenn's a defensive-minded head coach. I think the defense is going to be no problem. I like the move of hiring one of Ben Johnson's assistants as the offensive coordinator. So I think the offense will have flashes, but I just can't put faith in Justin Fields. I know they didn't have any better options. They just released Aaron Rodgers. This is kind of seems like a buffer year, just like not tank for a quarterback, but see what we got and then draft the quarterback next year. And I said the Jets defense didn't carry them in games this year. I think the Miami offense will surprisingly keep them in games as well. However, I think both of these teams are gonna completely blow up. Well, the Jets won, but I think the Dolphins for sure completely overhaul the team. I think McDaniel's gonna be gone if they go 3-14. I think they look at Tua's long term. His health is shown as an issue early on in his career. Tyreek Hill could be traded at the deadline. I mean, the only like true pieces I see as cornerstones on their offense are Waddle and Devon Achane. So I think the Jets and Dolphins fans are in for a rude awakening. I hope they prove me wrong, but I just don't see them. I think the AFC East is going to go like that. Moving on to a tough division, the AFC North. You have the Ravens, Bengals, Steelers. I think all three teams can win the division, and then you're going to have the Browns, which I don't know how to view the Browns this year with Joe Flacco as the starting quarterback. However, I had the Ravens edging out the Steelers and the Bengals just slightly. I trust the Ravens' past year success over the other two. I think the Steelers had past year success, but they always collapse down the stretch. I know the Bengals finally paid Shamar Stewart and Trey Hendrickson after all this offseason shenanigans, but I still don't trust the defense. I think it'll be slightly improved after getting Al Golden. The offense is one of the best in the league. You have Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Chase Brown. The offense is going to be the issue to me. The defense, once again. However, I think the Ravens are the most well-rounded team in this division, honestly. I think the Bengals have the best offense. The Steelers have the best defense overall. But if you put it all together, the Ravens have the best roster, and I think they're going to win the division barely. I just think the Browns are going to be the Browns. They have 2 first-round picks next year. I know they took Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel in this draft, but I would not be surprised if they draft a quarterback next year because they're going to have ammo to move up. And if they finish 3-14, they're going to have a top 5 pick for sure, probably top 3. So I don't think they're going to tank this year, but I just don't see excitement in this team, honestly. All right. Now we're going to move over to the AFC South. I think this is, once again, going to be a very weak division. I have the 4-seeded Jaguars just edging out the Texans this year, going 8-9 and winning the division. I think the Texans would win this division, but after doing the record prediction on this website, I had the Jaguars slightly edging out the Texans. I think the Texans O-line, they revamped it and everything, drafting Ariante Erst. They just cut Trent Brown, though, but they made a lot of moves in the offseason, but I still doesn't move me. I still think the O-line is going to not be that good, and I get they try to revamp it and everything this offseason, but I think it's terrible for CJ Stroud's success. It's going to hinder his development a little bit. I still think he's a fantastic quarterback, but he's on a rookie contract. You just traded away Laramie Tunsil. I guess I get it. I heard the offseason rumors that you wanted a new leader in the offensive line room, but trading away one of the best premier blindside protectors in Laramie Tunsil, I think that was a terrible decision. And that's going to cost them this year. I think the offense is going to be in. The defense, Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter, Derek Stingley, I think 3 stars. And I think they're going to be better than the offense this year. I think Nico Collins is going to have a big year, but you don't have Tank Dell. Christian Kirk, nice pickup and everything. We still don't know much about Joe Mixon's injury. D'Amico Ryan has been non-committal about if he's going to play a week 5 after he's off the NFL list. So that's why I have him going 7-10. I like the Jaguars. I think the Jaguars are one of the most boomer bust teams this year. Bringing in Liam Cohn after him producing a dominant Bucs offense, making Baker Mayfield look fantastic and everything. I think Trevor Lawrence objectively is more talented than Baker Mayfield, has more tools to be a great quarterback. So I think this is going to be a big, big Trevor Lawrence year. Travis Hunter, fantastic. Brian Thomas Jr., the running back room, who knows who's going to emerge as the top running back on that team. But I think it's in the weak division by the Jaguars, slightly edging out the Texans. I had the Titans going 6-11, which, if I'm not mistaken, I think they won 3 or 4 games last year. So it's a little bit of an improvement. I think Cam Ward has a solid year. Overall, looking at every roster in the NFL, they have one of the bottom tier rosters, but I think Cam Ward is going to surprise a lot of people. And then the Colts, who knows? I mean, if you're picking between Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones to start as your quarterback, That's just a bad decision. Daniel Jones was with the Giants. He looked terrible. And then he got the, rest for a year. I don't think the Colts are going to do good this year at all. I think they're going to be looking for a quarterback next year early in the draft. And I think Tyler Warren, great pick. I think he's going to shine. I honestly think Tyler Warren's going to benefit the most from having Daniel Jones. Like I said, I think Indianapolis is going to clear house this year. I don't think their roster is good at all. I think Chris Ballard's gone. I think Shane Steichen, this is his final year. If he goes 4-13, I think this is another roster or another complete overhaul instead of coming off season for them. All right. Now we move over to the NFC. Funny thing is, I did this record prediction a week or so ago, and I was figuring out what I want to talk about each team. And the Packers made the biggest move of the offseason, going all in and trading for Micah fucking Parsons. 2 first-round picks, going to be late 20s, early 30s. Could even win the Super Bowl, after making this big move. I mean, the pass rush was non-existent last year, so completely filling their biggest need, trading for a 26-year-old superstar edge rusher in his prime. And I have them going 12-5. I think they're the 1 seed in the NFC, win the whole NFC North, and I think they have a star in Jordan Love on offense, a superstar in Micah Parsons on defense. I think they have a very well-rounded team. They have a solid O-line, Zach Tom, Elton Jenkins, Rasheed Walker. I think it's solid O-line. You have Josh Jacobs, one of the best in the league. Drafting Matthew Golden, finally the first receiver in over 20 years, if I'm not mistaken. Drafted in the first round from the Packers. So I think the Packers are going in the right direction. I think they're a young team. Trading for Micah Parsons, we're hearing he's having back issues. That was a real thing. A lot of people, including myself, thought it was a fake thing, just, to just rest until the Cowboys eventually paid him or traded him. After going to the physical, it turned out it was a real thing. I still think Micah Parsons is going to play this year and be dominant. I don't even want to talk about the Cowboys yet, but I don't know what Jerry Jones is doing. So I think the Packers have a very well-rounded roster. Stars on offense, stars on defense. Improved 2 of their biggest needs, receiver Matthew Golden and edge help. Just rushing the passer. Micah Parsons, one of the best in the league. For 2 first-round picks, and Kenny Clark sounds like a lot, but Micah Parsons is a floor raiser and a ceiling raiser. And I think these picks are going to be in the high 20s. I think it was a terrible trade for the Cowboys. You make Micah Parsons the highest paid non-quarterback in league history, $47 million per year. I think the Packers made the right decision to go all in. Now we have the Lions. The Lions went 15-2 last year. I think they're going to have a slight regression, but still have a great season. I have them going 3-3 to division. However, I think the loss of Ben Johnson, everyone keeps saying it and everything. However, I think it's going to be an issue. I don't want Lions fans to hate me, but I think they're going to have a slight regression. I don't doubt the star power on the team. Maybe Amon-Ra, Jahmyr Gibbs, Aiden Hutchinson coming back. But I have them going a slight regression. They're not going to be as dominant on the offensive side. They dealt with a lot of injuries on defense. They're getting Aiden Hutchinson back, a bunch of defenders back. I think the defense is actually really good this year. Aiden Hutchinson is one of the favorites for Defensive Player of the Year. He had a dominant start last year before he got injured for the rest of the season. I still think the offense isn't going to be as dominant. However, I have them going 12-5 in the NFC. Moving on to the Vikings and Bears. I think Vikings fans are going to realize how important Sam Darnold was to their success last year. Don't get me wrong. I don't think Sam Darnold's some top 5 quarterback. However, I think he's one of the better quarterbacks in the league. He was a great scheme fit for the Vikings last year in a Kevin O'Connell offense. Kevin O'Connell's proven that he can produce good offenses. And from what I've seen at Michigan for J.J. McCarthy, I think he can be a great quarterback, amazing quarterback. We had a whole year after being injured and sitting out to develop and everything. But I don't think they're going to be as successful to start the year with J.J. McCarthy, technically a rookie quarterback who didn't play last year. I think they're going to come off with a slow start, but they're going to pick it up down the stretch. J.J. McCarthy's going to get the hang of the Vikings offense, and they could be a team that maybe next year can make the playoffs, go on a run in the playoffs. Year 2, J.J. McCarthy, technically year 3, but year 2, another year under his belt. Justin Jefferson only getting better, still in his prime. Everyone's getting better on the offense. They don't have Jordan Addison for the first few games this year too, so I think they're going to start off slow. It could pick it up. 10-7 is still a pretty good record, slight regression from last year. However, I wouldn't be surprised if they make the playoffs. I could be wrong. Vikings fans, you can come back at this during the playoffs and tell me I'm wrong. And then we have the Bears. And beforehand, I wanted the Bears to go better than 8-9, but I had to be true to myself. I went week by week and try to be as fair as possible in what I really think could happen for the Bears. It's better than last year for sure, but the NFC North is just so damn good. I see them improving on both sides, though. I think the new coaching staff is going to help them. They got better all around, but I think it's going to take another year or so before we see full success from the Bears. Going 8-9, I think Bears fans will realize it's a successful season. I know they have high standards right now because Ben Johnson was one of the top coaches or the top head coaching candidate this offseason. So I think they're going to have high expectations, but I still think going 8-9 is a good thing for the Bears, and I think they can build on it. And for years to come, they could be a dominant team. All right. Now we're going to be talking about the NFC West. I am very high on the Rams this year. Call me crazy. I know I've seen the Matthew Stafford news about him potentially not being healthy. 12-5 is under the assumption that he's going to be fully healthy this season. I am going 4-2. I think Puka Nacua can have a dominant season. I think Davante Adams and him complement each other so damn well. I think Davante Adams still has it in his early 30s. You know, usually around 30s when you see receivers trying to drop off. But I think he's one of the best route runners in the league, if not still the best route runner. I think they have two dominant weapons on offense. You know, like I said, Nacua and Adams. Matthew Stafford is still an elite quarterback at his age. You could argue top 5. And I think the defense was very solid last year for how young it was. And I think after another year of continuity in that defense, they're only going to get better. I mean, you have Jared Verse, who was like 23, 24 last season. Same with Braden Fisk. And I think they're only going to get better. I mean, they're not even in the primes yet, and they had a very, very good rookie season. So I'm very high in the Rams. I see the offense being top 5, the defense being top 5, top 10. I think that's a success to making the playoffs and going far in the playoffs, and I think they can have a deep run this year. Now moving on to the Arizona Cardinals. And honestly, before I did the record predictions, I not the highest on the Cardinals, you know, but I'm not gonna make this up. I went week by week, and I'm going 10-7, 3-3 in the division as a 7th seed in the NFC, just making the playoffs. The reason why I'm just not that high in the Cardinals this year is Kyler Murray. It's just consistency. One game he looks like a franchise quarterback, and the next game is like, man, he's one of the bottom half quarterbacks in the league. However, year 2 Marvin Harrison Jr. and Kyler Murray connection should be better. I mean, it had such high expectations last year, and it was good. It was just people put such high expectations on Marvin Harrison Jr., which rightfully so. I mean, one of the best receiver prospects we've seen coming in the draft in a while. And another dominant season from Trey McBride. And I think the defense is very underrated for them. I think the Arizona Cardinals defense is underrated. And that's why I'm going 10-7. I could be very wrong too. And then next we have the San Francisco 49ers, who are another team to judge this year. I could be completely wrong on them just missing the playoffs, going 10-7. You know, if I'm not mistaken, they have, based off last season's records, the easiest schedule on paper. So I could be wrong. But, you know, like I said, I see the Niners, especially after all the injuries they had last season, getting key players back like CMC this season. And if I'm not mistaken, Trent Williams is gone for most of the season last year, so they're getting him back. I also think, especially this offseason, I'm talking about injuries, you know, Brandon Ayuk going to be out for a couple weeks, you know, and John Lynch just didn't seem, you know, too happy to share all the injury news and all the updates with, you know, Brandon Ayuk. He didn't want to give a timeline on Brandon Ayuk earlier in the offseason. And, you know, they lost Dre Greenlaw, Hufanga, both to the Broncos. They lost Debo, who I know some people don't like Debo, but I think he was an intricate part of the offense last year. So I see players coming back, but the receiver health scares me. Jawan Jennings, I forgot to mention. I could see them being 12-5 like the Rams, but I think the losses outweigh the additions, even with them getting CMC and Trent Williams back this year. And when CMC's healthy, he's one of the best running backs in the league, but I can't trust CMC's health, you know, at this point. Half of his career has been injured. So I could be wrong. 49ers fans, don't be mad at me, but I have them going 10-7, which is still a good year, but missing the playoffs would definitely be a disappointment. I was just talking about how Sam Darnold was a great scheme fit with the Vikings, and it's hard to explain how I have them going 5-12. I could be totally wrong. I could see them as another team that I would describe as a boomer bust team this year, but I think the lack of offensive weapons this year worries me. I like Jackson Smith and Jigba, but losing DK Metcalf, a big play threat, and I think that's what their offense is going to lack this year. I don't think they're going to have a big play receiver to make big plays, you know. JSN's the do-it-all, route runner, strong hands, great route running, everything. And, they signed Cooper Kupp in the offseason. Same with CMC. Cooper Kupp's health nowadays, when he's healthy, one of the better receivers in the league. But I can't trust Cooper Kupp this year. And then after that, who do they have? I see a lot of buzz coming from Torrey Horton, the rookie from Colorado State. But the defense worries me. Kenneth Walker, too, has had injury history. So with that being said, I have them going 5-12. The Eagles going 11-6. The Eagles have a hard schedule this year, but most of the key pieces they retained from the Super Bowl run. They retained most of the the main pieces, other than Darius Slay, a little bit older but was pretty solid last year. Jason Kelce to retirement, and Mekhi Becton, who had a turnaround year. Philly's line coach, who always seems to turn around linemen, or always helps linemen that are projects. However, I still think they have a great season going 11-6, 5-1 in the division, and I think Saquon's gonna have another good year. A little bit of regression. I think the offense is gonna be good. I think the defense is amazing again. Another season under Vic Fangio, but I just have them going 11-6 this year. Just tying with the Commanders in the division, but beating them out with the division record. And the Eagles can go very far in the playoffs, but just with the hard record and everything, going week by week, I see them going 11-6. All right, now we move to the Washington Commanders. They finally paid Terry McLaurin this offseason, and I honestly think it was necessary for the success of the offense. Jaden Daniels has another great season after McLaurin signing. Daniels had one of the best rookie seasons of all time for a quarterback. Another year in Cliff Kingsbury's offense is only going to get better. Kingsbury's one of the best offensive-minded coaches in the whole NFL. The Commanders had such low expectations last year. Dan Quinn, the veterans in the team, all played factors into the success. Cliff Kingsbury's offensive scheme to help Jaden Daniels develop in his first year was amazing. I think he can open it up a little bit more and see what Jaden Daniels can do. Now let's talk about the sophomore slump. CJ Stroud had a good rookie season and then dipped down year 2, year 3 for him this year. A lot of people like to say they have, film on him, more film on Jaden Daniels, but I still have him going 11-6. I think, they can go far in the playoffs. I think they're going to be a great team this year. Next, we have the Dallas Cowboys. I don't even want to talk about the Dallas Cowboys, I'm not even a Cowboys fan, and Jerry Jones just makes me so mad. The big question this offseason was paying Micah Parsons. And obviously, like I said earlier, they traded him to the Packers for 2 probably late first-round picks. And they got back a solid player in Kenny Clark. But, I think the defense is obviously going to be an issue now. I think their defense is a bunch of average to a slightly above average players with no star. Micah Parsons was the heart and soul of the defense, and I think the pass rush is going to be pretty poor. I see they draft Donovan Ezeraku. Could surprise some people. And they have Kenny Clark, Osa Odigizua. I still they have some solid players on their defense. But I think that's an issue for the team going 9-8, just missing the playoffs. I think the offense is going to be sneakily a top 5 offense this year with the big addition of George Pickens, CeeDee Lamb, Jake Ferguson. I think is going to have a great year. The running back room's a little bit is not to be desired, really. I think Dak Prescott, all the hate he gets, I think he's a top half quarterback in the league. I think he's a good floor quarterback, and I think Dak Prescott can honestly throw for 4,500, 5,000 yards. I think they're going to be a pass-heavy offense. I think CeeDee Lamb can have 1,500 plus yards. George Pickens can have 1,200 plus yards. Jake Ferguson can have 600, 700, 800 yard season. The offense is not going to be an issue, but I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but I think Jerry Jones really hurt the defense, obviously. I don't understand the roster construction on this team. You have the highest paid quarterback based off of annual average with Dak Prescott. So you would think you'd be all in. It's not an old roster, but you would think after paying Dak Prescott that much money, you would pay Micah Parsons what he's deserved. But I have him just missing the playoffs going 9-8. And I think this offseason, they're going to have to take a look at themselves in the mirror. And, I forgot to even mention, I think, Trayvon Diggs and Deron Bland, they just extended Deron Bland to a 4-year contract. They're one of the better parts of the defense, but both of them have injury concerns and have had a history of injuries, and they worry me too, so I don't know how to view the defense. I think it's for sure going to be worse than last year, and I think the offense is going to keep them in games and some shootouts, and I think the offense for the Cowboys is going to be a top 5 offense this year. Now moving on to the Giants. How do I view Russell Wilson? It's hard. I think he's going to help the offense, and I think he's going to help Malik Neighbors develop even more. But I just don't think the offense is a high ceiling. I think Russell Wilson's a floor raiser, but they're in a hard division, the NFC East, and I have them 1-5 in the division. The defense, opposite of the Cowboys, the defense, you have Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence, probably the best interior defensive lineman in the league. Abdul Carter was just drafted. I think the defensive line is going to be dominant with pass rushing. They're going to win them 5 games. I make it hell for younger quarterbacks, first or second year quarterbacks that when they play them. And that's where they're going to pick up their wins. I think this is going to be a complete reset this offseason. I think Joe Shane's done. Brian Daboll's gone. If they finish 5-12 like I have them. The Giants have some young pieces. Their roster is not terrible. They have young pieces like Abdul Carter, Malik Neighbors, some good vets, Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence, Andrew Thomas. But I think they have the pieces and the cornerstones to be a great team. And I don't think Brian Daboll's a bad coach, and I don't think Joe Shane's a bad GM, but I just think that they haven't been able to figure out the quarterback situation. And, that could fall into, last regime's issue with drafting Daniel Jones. If I'm not mistaken, they were the ones that extended him after that playoff run. I think the lack of them being able to find a quarterback, I know they drafted Jackson Dart, but maybe if I have them going 5-12, I could see them starting Jackson Dart midway through the season. I think Jackson Dart has a ton of potential. We saw that in the preseason. I know it's just the preseason, but he looked like the potential to be a damn good quarterback in this league. But you have them going 5-12 in a tough NFC East. Now we're gonna move over to the NFC South, which I wouldn't want to say a tough division, but I think they're gonna be a very competitive this division. I could see the Panthers, the Falcons, or the Bucs winning the division, but I think the Bucs will be good this year. Obviously, I worry the offense won't be as good this year with the loss of Liam Cohn and not having Godwin for early portions of the season. But I think Emeka Egbuka will fit right in. Mike Evans is consistent as usual. Bucky Irving, second year, breakout last year. Surprised a lot of people. But I just think the Bucs are slightly the best team of everyone in the South. I think the offense is not going to be the problem. I think the defense is going to continue to be the problem. But I have them as the 4 seed. I think, Todd Bowles, the defensive coach, and the defense being bad is not a good sign for Todd Bowles. But I just don't like the defense this year, just like last year. I could see the Falcons or Panthers winning the divisions. I have the Falcons going 9-8, and the Panthers going 8-9. I like the Falcons a lot this year. I think they're gonna be a fun team to watch with Michael Penix. It's the first year as a full starter. I like how they surround him with good pieces like Drake London, Bijan Robinson, 2 top players at their positions. And just like the Bucs, I think their defense worries me as well. I know they invested a lot in the defense especially in the draft after trading their first round pick next year to trade up and get James Pierce Jr. But I like, they have the building blocks to be a good defense in the future, but I think we can't rely too much on James Pierce Jr. and Jalen Walker to be great coming out the gate. I think the defense worries me, and that's why I have them going 9-8. I just think the offense is slightly worse than the Bucs. I could be wrong, and I could see the Falcons winning the division, and then moving on to the Panthers, I could also see them winning the division. I think benching Bryce Young actually working, down the stretch when he came back. He looked like a great a legit quarterback who made big throws and kept him in big games. And like I said, I like how, just like the Falcons, I like how the Panthers are investing in Bryce Young, drafting 2 receivers back-to-back first round, Xavier Legette and Tetairoa McMillan, who I think are both going to be the building block for the offense and the future. But once again, the defense in the NFC South worries me all around. I think Bryce Young is going to have a big season, and like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if the Panthers win the division. And then moving on to the Saints, who are competing for the number 1 pick this year. The worst team, in my opinion, this year. I'm happy the Saints finally chose a direction and are going in a rebuild. They have some good young pieces on their team. I like Kelvin Banks Jr., Talisa Fuanga, Eric McCoy, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Brian Brzee, kinda. But I think that their overall roster is a bunch of aging. I forgot to mention Chris Olave. But I think their roster has a lot of aging veterans and a very weak roster. I think they should sell players like, hate me, Saints fans, but if Cam Jordan gets you any interest from a playoff team that needs D-line depth at the trade deadline, Demario Davis is still old but very solid for his age and one of the best linebackers in the league. And I think that the Saints finally chose a direction, and they finished as the worst team this year, and they get the number one overall pick, and they obviously take a quarterback. I don't think Tyler Shuck is going to keep them away or shy them away from taking a quarterback if they have the number one pick next year. Thanks, everyone, for watching this episode, the first episode of the season. Be on the lookout for more episodes and more videos for this channel. I'm going to be covering all things this season. If you guys like the video, please like and subscribe to see more content.